Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another live stream with Claire Alden Publications. Thank you for joining us this evening. We are excited because we're closing out the month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, with a licensed mental health counselor. We have Patrece M. Lucas as our guest this evening. So we're welcoming her to the Claire Alden Publications platform. I want to let everyone know a little bit about her, so I'm going to read some of her bio. Patrece is a licensed mental health counselor and serves as a community counselor in Detroit and the surrounding areas. In private practice as a counselor, life coach, and mediator at her own practice called Indigo Transitions, Patrece assists clients as they prepare for, manifest, and begin to live their best lives. Patrece also provides consulting services as a business coach, nationally recognized speaker, trainer, and facilitator. In addition to Patrece's work as a counselor serving individuals, couples, families, and organizations, she runs a social advocacy program, Coffee with a Counselor. Coffee with a Counselor provides workshops, lectures, grief counseling, and coffee, cocoa circles, anywhere groups gather and provide mental health awareness, education, intervention, and prevention. Patrece also contractually provides counseling support for families in care through the Michigan Department of Human Services for adult and child protective services cases, and has worked in the recent past as a court-appointed special advocate, volunteer, and worked with families in the juvenile courts as a child advocate who has been removed from their parents and are in care working towards reunification or placement. So, if that wasn't enough, in addition to her practice, in addition to the social advocacy and contract work, Patrece is the resident and founding counselor at Where Do Black Women Go to Grieve? Patrece is also a grief doula. We'll have her tell us exactly what that is, but she's a grief doula providing support during terminal illness for caregivers, during hospice care, for death and loss education, with burial and memorial planning, with family and community aftercare, and supporting families and communities throughout their grief journey. So we are excited today to welcome Patrece Lucas, licensed mental health counselor, and all those wonderful things that we just heard about in the bio. So welcome, Patrece.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to join anyone on their platform and want me to share more about my work. And, one of the biggest things, the biggest premise of my work is being a community counselor. And, when I decided to become a counselor, I wanted to do justice as much as possible, which is really get on any one platform that would have me and really destigmatize mental health.
I
Right.
love
And
that.
so be able to talk about mental health. I always say I work from everybody to the cradle to the grave. So I support new parents as they transition into parenthood and the birthing experience and all that. And I worked with a lot of doulas and midwives in that role, working with parents. And I recognize the similarities between birth and death. Right.
Okay.
It is a transition from here to there. And in my opinion, it should be celebrated as such, right? And it
Yes.
should be given the same care and the same honor. And so that's the grief doula work that I do. You asked a little bit more about that and to kind of explain it. And so when I say I work with families from the cradle to the grave, I literally support patients in care who are often terminally ill and in transitioning. And there's preparation in that. So I help them, birth into that new reality. And that's the idea behind grief doula. This work wasn't something that I chose. It chose me.
Okay.
If you'd have asked me even just 5 years ago, Patrece, are you going to be a grief doula? Are you going to be at that bedside with families? Are you going to help people transition and then help the loved ones after that transition and then the community? I would have said absolutely not. It was not something that, I thought I would do. And then as I began to read about what a grief doula was, do the actual work, support the community and the families this way, I recognized that, oh, okay, this is something I want to do.
Wow, that is powerful. So we heard a little bit about what a grief doula is, which again, I had never heard that term. So I'm excited about, the work that you do in that capacity because, as our parents get older, we sometimes have to care for our parents in addition to caring for our own children. So we find ourselves in a
Mhm.
space where we need someone who can kind of
Yes.
usher us through these transitions in life.
Mhm.
But I want to ask you, where did you get the name Indigo Transitions? So tell us a little bit about that.
So indigo, my favorite color is blue. I don't have on blue today. I literally say I changed out of blue because I don't know. I just was like, no, this is not working today. So my
Okay.
favorite color is blue. So that's where the indigo comes from. I wanted some play on blue in the title of my company. My undergraduate degree is computer science. And
Okay.
so I have had a 16-year career in IT. And so Indigo Transition is a play on that as well. I'm still in IT, the I and the T
Ah,
for Indigo Transitions.
I love that.
But indigo is a play on the color blue. I wanted to incorporate that. I wanted to incorporate the transitions that we all go through in this journey called life. Again, I support everyone from the cradle through the grave. And as you recognize, there's so many transitions in our lives from the cradle to the grave. And so I wanted to honor that. And then as African Americans, we've often been called indigo people. And there's this
Mhm.
idea around an indigo child. And so it's as much about helping those indigo people and those indigo children transition in this social construct, because I think that's important, right?
Yes,
So that's
beautiful.
it's a big story sort of for the name. It's a lot of components in it, but it truly is unapologetically kind of how I wanted to show up in my work, helping the indigo people transition.
Well, thank you so much. And everything that you said is so true. We honor the fact that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. We want to bring some additional awareness to mental health, particularly in the African American community. So, if you could just share with us, because again, this is a taboo topic for a lot of people in the African American
Absolutely.
community. For so many of us, it's been, again, something that you didn't talk about, something that might have had some shame around it and embarrassment and those types of things. So if you had a message that you could give to, again, it's a little far-fetched, but the community as a whole, what would you want that to be as a professional in this space and being a part of this community?
Absolutely. And so, one of the biggest things that I always want our community to understand and to help to release the stigma is I always say it's okay to not be okay. Right.
Yes.
But I always like to do the parallel between our physical health and our mental health. It's okay. And we give reverence to when someone is not well from a physical health perspective. We understand it. We give them the space to get the treatment that they need, to pause, to take time off work, etc. But
Yes.
from a mental health perspective, we don't give that same acknowledgement as a whole, not just in African American community, but in the community as a whole. We often don't acknowledge pain we can't see.
True.
So I'm going to say that one more time. We often don't acknowledge pain we can't see. And because mental health pain or mental health, a lack of mental health, we often cannot see it. So we don't really give a lot of weight to it or energy around being giving care. But we should be just as proactive in our mental health as we are in our physical health, because they're actually tied. Your mental health impacts your physical health, and your physical health impacts your mental health. The thing I want to say to African Americans in our community in particular is that one of the biggest reasons that we don't necessarily take care of our health in general, not just our mental health, but our physical health as well. Number one, you can't ignore physical health. We see it. We are bent over. We're in pain. It's so prevalent for us that it can't be ignored. And it's more socially acceptable to acknowledge I'm having back pain, my arm is broken, my foot's not well, et cetera, what all those things are. So we do that. But we don't acknowledge our mental health. But we really, that's just a carryover of not really taking care of our health in general. And what I always like to remind us is that, there was a time when we literally were beaten out of our awareness to be able to say I'm not okay, right? And so
Right.
that wasn't an option. We just completely always had to keep going. There was never, the reality is, as being enslaved people and now oppressed and marginalized people in this country, we are often not given permission to not be okay, to take the time to say, am I okay to get today, to check in with ourselves, to ask ourselves, um, what is wrong with me, and maybe what are the things that I need to do to pause. So I like to give that reminder because it helps them to understand why they don't do it for themselves. I do something what's called a biopsychosocial with all my clients. And in the biopsychosocial, I assess functionality. I assess the symptoms a client may have, and I determine whether or not they're functioning or not. So it's, how does this symptom impact your quality of life? And how does this symptom impact your day-to-day functioning? With my African American clients, I always give, I kind of always quantify that and kind of give a disclaimer that we don't ever stop functioning. We don't ever stop going to work, going to school, being mama, being daddy, showing up in our communities, because again, that was a luxury that was literally denied us. And if we paused in any way in our work or stopped to assess our own individual personal needs, we could be killed because of it. Or even now today, our livelihoods can be taken away from us. And so I always frame that to say, is not necessarily are you functioning, because we've been, again, cultured and programmed and even beaten and killed to always function, is to how is your functioning impacted, right? So I even have to soften it for them.
Wow. Those are very sobering comments.
Mhm.
So if you're watching us, thank you for joining. If you have any questions as we're just having this conversation back and forth, drop your comments in the comment box so that we can go ahead and ask them during the live stream. If you're already getting value from this, share this on your timeline, start a watch party. We want to get the awareness out there within our community. In particular, let's have some conversations around mental health. So again, thank you for those sobering comments. You touched on what I refer to as survivor mode. So what
Survival.
can
Yeah.
you share, for anyone who is, again, you just the day to day, day in, day out, you go to work, you come home, you make it
Mhm.
happen, and you don't necessarily take that time to stop and check in with yourself. What can you share for
Mhm.
someone who's been in survival mode for way too long?
For way too long. So one of the biggest things is not my language, but it's something I heard and picked up and been repeating ever since. But we can't thrive doing the same things we do to survive, right?
Mm,
And often people want to thrive. They want to succeed. They want to get on the other side of survival mode. And so one of the things that they have to acknowledge is I can't continue to do the exact same things that I have been doing in survival mode if I'm going to get to that thriving space. I
yeah.
always also what it's I almost said what I love about this pandemic, but it is kind of true. What I love, or what I see as grace in this pandemic, is that we are pausing in ways that we otherwise would not have paused, which is giving not only our community but the country at large, those who care to take it, an opportunity to pause and again do this kind of assessment. So I always say there's power in our pausing. And
Mm,
so that's the message. There's power in your pausing. Take some time, however you can figure out to get that time so you can pause, figure out and acknowledge, yes, I've been surviving. I want to thrive, and get to the point of doing things differently so you can get to that thriving space. I also want to share that we shouldn't be doing it by ourselves,
mm,
right? You should get a support system in place to help you get to the next level of your life.
that-
And so that's either a counselor or a life coach or a therapist, a pastor, a trusted friend, or all of those things, right? Don't limit yourself to just one. You can have all of them. I have all
yeah.
of them. And so there's power in our pausing. You can't survive the same way you can't thrive in the same ways that you've been surviving, and kind of create that village, create that support system of people that is going to help you get to the next level in your life.
Very good. So, talking about that support system, tell us a little bit more about Coffee with a Counselor. What is that about?
So thank you for that. So Coffee with the Counselor is kind of the passion of my work. Although I love individual counseling, what I recognize is that the need is so great in terms of mental health in our community, and in America at large. One of the things I always say in my individual sessions, I do a depression and anxiety scale, and I said basically anyone that lives in these Americas have some levels of anxiety or depression.
Yes.
because it's just part of this system. It's impossible to not be experiencing, particularly during a pandemic and what we're all experiencing right now. Now, the thing is, whether you show up on the scale or not, it doesn't mean you don't are not experiencing anxiety and depression. It just tells me that maybe you're coping with it better than some people are coping with it.
Okay.
So because the issue is so large, and everyone in this country, in my opinion, based on my personal and professional opinion, is dealing with some levels of mental health decline based on the nature of our social construct, and because we don't acknowledge our mental health and prioritize our mental health in the same ways we do our physical health. um, I needed to talk to the masses. I'm just one person, and there's only we're really outside of this pandemic, we're going to recognize the dire shortage that there is in the profession, honestly.
Okay.
Because there's going to be so many people in need. There are already so many people in need, and so we're going to recognize there's a shortage in the profession: counselors, therapists, psychologists, like social workers, etc. That's always been true, and so I wanted to meet the biggest number of people and clients possible, and so I came up with this idea to add a social component to it and do these group circle type sessions where I'm giving the care and I'm showing up as a counselor, but on a community level where more people get the results of it. So that's kind of where Coffee with a Counselor was born, and to destigmatize mental health in general.
Okay. All right. Now, one of the other things that we mentioned in your bio was, where do Black women go to grieve?
Mhm.
Especially, within the pandemic, we know that people have lost loved ones. They haven't been able to, memorialize them in the way that we have in the past and things of that nature. Tell us a little bit more about that movement. Where do Black women go to grieve?
Absolutely. So it was founded by my good girlfriend, SB Edifly Thomas of Sweet Potato Sensation. So she's the one of the owners of Sweet Potato Sensation. She's a daughter of the owners, her mother and father.
Okay.
And out of her own grief and wanting to find a place where she felt most comfortable being supported in her own grief, because our story is different than everybody else's story.
Mhm.
Our history is different than everyone else's history, and there's nuances and complexities to Black grief, African American grief, and African grief, which is true for all cultures, but we wanted to create a space for us.
Okay.
And so out of that, out of her own grief, she created Where Do Black Women Go to Grieve? And because she knew of my work in the community, with my work as Coffee with a Counselor, I was kind of doing the circuit and doing a lot of grief workshops in that way. She knew she wanted someone to show up and be a part of the group, and not hierarch themselves above the members of the group, and really mesh with the group and make it really plain and really approachable. And so that was founded going on 4 years ago. We've been doing Where Do Black Women Go to Grieve for going on 4 years now.
Well,
And the idea and the premise is literally the title: Where Do Black Women Go to Grieve? And giving us a space where it's okay to not be okay. We can take off our superwoman capes. We can be vulnerable. We can share, but without having to explain the context of our lives, without having to, help people understand. Esty, she always talks about, I don't have to explain the red cup here, or the white, or our traditions, or the reason why we bring this or that to the repast, etc.
yes.
It's just known amongst us, and we can support and love on each other in that way. So that's
Wonderful.
how it started.
I want to take a moment and ask you, in case anyone isn't able to stay on for the full time that we're having this conversation, how can people get in touch with you? How can they follow you, find out more about all of your projects, and support you?
Thank you for that. So my name is it's spelled. I have a Facebook page with my name, so you see my name there, Patrece M. Lucas, MS LPC. You can find me on Facebook under that name. I also am on Facebook under Indigo Transitions and Coffee with the Counselor. If you Google, kind of search for any of those should come up. If you Google my name, Patrece M. Lucas, even just on the World Wide Web, you'll in Google search, those are things that come up, and articles that I've been a part of and et cetera will come up as well. I'm also on Instagram. Again, Coffee with the Counselor and Indigo Transitions, and they can find me there. My telephone number and information is listed, but I'll give it here, and I'm going to give it in the context so people can come back in the comments, so people can come back after our live. But
Okay.
my telephone number is 248-957-1721. one of those counselors that I like text. I want you to text me. Again, how I show up in my community is based on what I needed, what I needed and need in this community. And that's someone that is reachable and someone that is available to me. And so that's why I call myself the community counselor. So send me a text, ask me a question. I love that. I won't necessarily be able to answer like right away in real
Sure.
time, although I'm responsive to emergencies. But I will get back to you. I'll answer the questions. I'll give you some feedback. I'll share a referral or a resource. Because again, I see the need for that in my community, and I want to show up in that way.
Yes. All right. So I'm going to ask you to
Text me,
repeat
call
that
me.
phone number again so that we can drop that in the comments.
Absolutely. And the number is 248-957-1721. You can text me or leave a message.
Wonderful. So I love that because I'm a big texter. So for those of you who like to text, you have someone who you can reach out to and again connect with for support. So a part of the reason that I wanted to invite you on in the month of May was obviously mental health awareness, but also this is our launch week for the Overcomers Anthology. And I know you had an opportunity to kind of, just breeze through the Overcomers
Yeah.
Anthology. For those of you watching, I want to let you know the paperback came
Yay.
today. So we
Congratulations
have the
again.
paperbacks in hand. We'll be distributing those to our co-authors. And if you've already pre-ordered your copy, they'll be going out in the mail really soon. So we dealt with some difficult topics in the
Mhm.
Overcomers Anthology. Um,
Mhm.
Anything that you want to share as far as any of the chapters that you read or any of the information that you read from any of our overcomers?
Absolutely. So I've concentrated on two chapters, the last two chapters of the book, because those are the ones that resonated with me, and you and I had a little bit of dialogue about those before. And so it was two mothers, right? One of the
Yep.
chapters was your own, and it was really about kind of the shame that comes with motherhood, and maybe even being a young mother and a single mother for sure. And so that's kind of again back to why we created Where Do Black Women Go to Grieve, even because we wanted to be celebrated in our ownness, right? And recognize and release the shame and the stigmas around some of the things and the challenges that we face that is unique to us. And so the idea of this overcoming, the finding your voice and learning how to be your unapologetic self, and making sure you are standing up for what you need, is really what all women need to do. All women and men need to do, right? And and really get clear on what I need to do to overcome the challenges that is sometimes external, but reinforced by that negative voice or
Yeah.
negative thinking that we have about ourselves. That was really the theme of those two chapters.
Good, good. Well, I appreciate that feedback because again, this was the first volume. Again, we have volume two launching June 1st, but as the first volume, there were some topics that, people were very vulnerable in sharing their stories. So I appreciate you taking the time to just read through that. I want those who are listening in to know that between our five co-authors, perhaps there's a story that you connect with more than the other, but I want you to get a copy of that book so that you can know you're not alone. There are people who've overcome, some things that you may be familiar with, some things that you may not be familiar with, but the overall theme is letting you know that you can come out, you can overcome, and you
That's
can
right.
thrive instead of just surviving.
That's right.
So thank you for
Absolutely.
sharing that. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead, drop those in the comment box. We want to be able to ask Patrice while we're here on the live stream, but I'm sure if you watch the replay and you have some questions or some comments, drop them in there. We'll make sure we get them to her so that she can respond and you can have the information that you need. So another thing that we tend to deal with is shame and guilt. And that also prevents some people from reaching out for help, from reaching out to get the support that they need to go through whatever they're experiencing in life. Any wisdom or nuggets to share around that?
Absolutely. So there's two. Shame and guilt is separate. They're two different things. Guilt is actually a healthier manifestation of when we believe or feel that we behaved poorly. Shame is that deep rooted, insidious, poison that really does rob you of being able to thrive, getting the help you need, showing up in your life the way that you want to. Guilt, on the other hand, is really naturally occurring. However, we don't want guilt to go into the extreme levels, right? And we don't want guilt to become so extreme that it literally turns into shame. So the difference between guilt and shame is guilt is I behaved poorly or I didn't make the best decision there. Shame is I am bad, I am poor, I am horrible, I never make good decisions, I'm incapable of making these decisions. You hear the distinction between the two?
Definitely.
One is character. Shame is about my character. I'm no good. Guilt is I could have done better there. It's gentler. It allows room for your growth. It also allows room and creates space for your own humanity. Okay. Here's the thing. Guilt and shame is not something that you just manifest one day out of the blue. Oftentimes it's handed to you as a gift from the people we love or the people who care about us the most or the culture or society or community, etc. And we have to acknowledge that as well. So again, people will guilt and or shame you, and it's important that you don't recognize it and accept it and internalize it for your own.
Okay. That's a powerful distinction. And thank you for that, because I don't think I've heard it explained quite that way. And even, guilt being the healthier of the two and more so about the behavior versus the character aspect of it. That's a really good distinction. So thank you for sharing that. Some of what we've talked about deals with establishing boundaries. And for some people, especially if you've been, again, this cycle, this in and out, just going through the motions, you haven't necessarily established the healthiest boundaries. What can you offer for someone who, is really trying to get rid of the toxicity in their life, get rid of the toxic relationships, and establish some boundaries when they have no roadmap to guide them on that? Anything that you would share with that person?
So the thing I would share is if something doesn't feel good, right? If it doesn't feel good to you, something you're engaging in, a behavior, a commitment even, it probably means that you need to look at your boundaries, right? So I want you to assess feelings, how you feel about something, but I also want you to assess the impacts to your life, right? Particularly your pillars of health. And the pillars of health that I define is mental, spiritual, physical, financial, sexual, emotional, and then also relationship / community health. And so you're assessing whether or not your behaviors, right, or your engagements, because that's behavior too, commitments, etc., is impacting your health. And one of the ways that it is impacting your health if it just doesn't feel good. So if the things you're doing doesn't feel good, it doesn't fill you up, then you probably should be assessing whether or not your boundaries are strong enough.
Okay.
One of the things that comes up in shame and guilt is they rob us of our ability to think we deserve boundaries. Right? And so if I'm deeply and severely impacted with guilt and think that all my behaviors are bad, or I'm just so rooted in the guilt of my behavior that impacted someone else negatively or caused an outcome for me or my family or community even, and then I may be robbed of my ability to feel like I deserve to set a boundary. And so the thing I would offer there is everyone deserves to set boundaries. You deserve to have what I call impeccable boundaries, which is doing everything in your power to protect every facet of your health. That's impeccable boundaries. Being unapologetic and doing all the things that I can do. And I'm paraphrasing my own quote here. Doing everything you can to be unapologetic of protecting every facet of your health. You deserve that. Everyone is worthy of health, right? And so everyone is worthy of setting boundaries.
Yes. Look, Patrece is dropping some wisdom, y'all. Go ahead and share this broadcast. Share it on your timeline. Send it to some people in direct messages so they can get this wisdom. Thank you again for all of this. So what can we expect next from you? Where can people connect with you as far as, do you have any events coming up or anything like that? Where can people connect with you and find out a little bit more about what's going on?
So actually, I don't have any events coming up. Sorta. I think I'm on another live this type of event, but it's there's a lot of events pending. So I
Okay.
would say go to those Facebook pages, the Instagram page, and I'm gonna post anytime that I'm doing just this speaking or doing different things in the community. All of my contact is on my social media pages. So there's a few things pending, but I don't have anything lined up. Just like most of everyone else, because of the pandemic, so
Mhm.
many of our things have been canceled. And so we've been really having to be flexible. As
Okay.
a result of the pandemic as well, all of my client load and my caseload has, as you can imagine, grown exponentially, almost doubled in size based on the need in our community, which I and other clinicians like myself are absolutely doing all we can to meet that need. So I'm staying really free and flexible. I'm not taking on a lot of commitments, and I'm not creating any content of my own. I thought, a lot of people during this time, they're like, oh, I'm going to create so much. I'm going to do so much. Oh, I'll be home. I can go live. I can do all this vlogging. No, no, I'm not doing that. I'm really concentrating and serving my community, but I'm available by request. I would like people to reach out to me if they want me to come and do this and for their organization, because again, the entire premise of my work is being a community counselor and showing up in the community to help bring awareness, prevention and intervention to mental health, and also, reducing the stigma so people can get the support and the help they need.
Good, good. So thank you
Thank you.
for the work that you do. Again, very
Thank you so much.
powerful information that you're sharing, powerful work that you're doing, both individually and with, again, Coffee with a Counselor and, helping Black women to grieve, all the projects that you're involved
Mhm.
with. Thank you so much for that. Anything else that you want us to know as far as mental health awareness in general? What are some things that we should be aware of, especially in a pandemic?
Mhm. So the thing to be aware of in a pandemic is kind of similar to what I say about living in America, honestly, given everything that's in the news during this time, which I'm certain you're aware of, is that it's not a matter of you will not be impacted. One of the biggest messages that I've been sharing as I am invited to speak during this time is it's not so much that if I do this, this, and this, I will not be impacted by the world around me, the pandemic, what's happening in our world. The reality is we're all going to be impacted. And the thing to do, the most we can do is optimize or raise our levels of health to lessen the impacts, right?
Mm,
We're always going to be impacted by external factors. And so the thing to promote mental health is do the things that is going to elevate your areas of health, because then you are less impacted by what is happening in the world, even a pandemic.
okay.
Okay, so we do those things by doing what we can do in the privacy of our home. I want you reaching out and getting the support of a counselor. Although I said there's a shortage in the field, there's still a lot of people not getting the services they need. There are a lot of things that I'm hearing is people are, oh, as soon as this is over, I'm going to get a counselor. You don't have to wait. A lot of counselors, a lot of organizations, there's a lot of initiatives for even free mental health services during this time. Lots of support available for people in terms of helping them, like I said, elevate their mental health or be supported in their mental health during this time. So reach out for a care provider. But if you're not ready to make that step, there's things you can do right in your own home. First, acknowledge that it's okay that I'm not okay. So assess, check in with yourself. Am I okay? What's coming up for me? What are some of the things how am I being impacted mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually? Write down a list and then decide, what can I do to minimize those impacts in my life? Three things that I always remind people, three to five things that I always remind people to do, and you're doing one of them. Hydrate, right?
Yeah.
Not 99.9, if not 100% of the times that I support a client, a community, and family in hospitalization, the client that's in a mental health crisis, they're dehydrated.
Oh, wow.
So hydration. In addition, another large percentage of those same individuals that are supported in a mental health crisis and are hospitalized, they're dehydrated and they're malnourished
Mm,
because we don't often get the nutrients we need. So hydration, you're looking at your hydration, 8 to 10 cups of water a day, and your nourishment. Now, here's the thing. I'm in a pandemic, just like y'all in a pandemic, and I'm eating all the snacks too, and that's okay because the human body tells us to do that,
Right.
right? That's our one of our survival things to kind of in times of stress to eat as much as we can because our biology tells us that our meals may not be guaranteed because there's so many heightened levels of stress. So
Right.
nourish yourself, eat the comforting things, but also make sure you're getting some fruits and vegetables every day because that's brain food. That's
Yes.
creating that optimal nourishment to create the space for you can have optimal brain health. The other thing is breath work and relaxation and sleep. I lump those kind of all together, right? That's rest. Taking cleansing good breaths is really super important during this time. Making sure we're doing things to do relaxation, getting as much sleep as we possibly can. Not so much worrying about our sleep schedule, but making sure we're just giving ourselves time to rest. The other thing is exercise and get out into nature as much as possible. There's about 5 things we can do to elevate our health, to create the most optimal mental health. Not that we won't be impacted, but that our impacts will be minimized.
Excellent tips.
Okay.
Excellent tips. So I want to go a
Yeah.
little off grid because you are a woman in business, because you have your own private practice, you're doing lots of things. I have my own businesses. So any advice that you would offer to women who are in business during this time? And I say women specifically because a lot of times
Mhm.
we're the caregivers, we're the ones that are always giving of ourselves, and we're, working full time, trying to have a business, doing other things. So anything for women in business.
Absolutely. So the thing I would share is be gentle with yourself, right? Be gentle with yourself. Give yourself lots of grace. Your business is going to look a lot different outside of a pandemic than it does in a pandemic. That may look like just not being so hard on yourself. That this perfectionism, this superwoman,
Mm,
thing that we sometimes do. We shouldn't ever be doing it, but we certainly it's impossible and is a detriment to our health to be doing it when it's not a pandemic, but it's certainly a detriment when we're in a pandemic. So be gentle with yourself. Be reasonable. Set reasonable expectations for your business and your goals, right? But one of the
yeah.
things I do want to say is be gentle with yourself. Give yourself lots of grace, and just hold on. Don't feel like you have to figure it all out and do the most during this time. It's really about sustainability. It's really about sustaining and being survive on the other side of the pandemic.
Yes. We all want to come out of this and be able to celebrate and get some hugs and love on folks. Absolutely.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
Good. Look, she has shared
Absolutely.
so much wisdom, so much as far as excellent tips, excellent advice. Any final thoughts that you want? Because I don't see any questions.
Mhm.
So if you have questions, now's your chance. Go ahead, drop them in the
Okay.
comments. But any final thoughts that you want to share with our audience today?
Thank you for joining us, and taking the time, whether you're seeing this live or you're going to watch the replay. So I want to celebrate and thank you for taking the time to giving yourself the opportunity to just pause in your day and come and get some mental health tips, which also acknowledge that you need support in that area. So I think that's something that you should be proud of yourself for coming to do, to being even whether it's a part of the live or again, you're listening to this in the replay. So thank you for, joining us. And I'm always honored when someone decides and is intentional about listening to my voice and letting me talk and share about something that I'm incredibly passionate about, which is mental health. So thank
Yes.
you.
Yes. Look, it's my honor. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Look, when I thought about mental health awareness, you were the first to come to mind. So thank you for accepting the invitation and for being a part of this live
Thank you
stream
so much for
today.
having me.
Yes. So tell us again how we can follow you, how we can get
Thank you
in
so
touch with
much.
you so that we know how to connect even once the live stream is done.
Absolutely. So one of the best ways is Patrice and Lucas MSLPC. That's a Facebook page. From that Facebook page, you can also find the rest of my Facebook pages, which is Coffee with the Counselor and Indigo Transitions. Both of those are on Facebook, and then Coffee with the Counselor and Indigo Transitions is on Instagram, and you can find me those ways. I'll also post the links to that information in the comment after today's live broadcast.
Excellent, excellent. So for all of our overcomers out there, and for everyone watching both live and the replay, make sure you follow Patrice M. Lucas. Go and support her Facebook pages. Follow her on social media. She has dropped some real gems, wisdom, nuggets today. So go and follow her so you can continue to support them and support mental health awareness, particularly in the African American community. Thank you again so
Absolutely.
much. We appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah.
That's all we have for now. So, everyone, if you have some more questions, let us know. We'll check back so we can get your questions answered. But thank you for joining Clear Alden Publications today with special guest Patrice M. Lucas. So, thank you again and good night, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.
All righty.
Good
Bye.
night.